Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest's mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome to Manders Mindset, where we explore the power of shifting your mindset to shift your life. I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am so excited to be joined today by Wes Towers. And Wes is the founder of Uplift 360, and he's someone who built his life from the ground up after hitting rock bottom. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Amanda. It's a privilege to be here and talk about a few of these things today.
Absolutely. So can you tell us who Wes is at the core?
Well, it's evolved to my self-identity, I suppose, over the years. But I mean, what I do for work is part of who I am. So I run a digital agency. So we do websites and SEO and all those kind of fun things for trades and construction business typically. And yeah, it's been rebuilt to a large degree. A lot of things have been rebuilt in life over the last 3 or 4 years. Challenging times, but sometimes the most challenging times become the most fruitful times because it gives you an opportunity to rethink through what you want out of life and who you really are.
I completely agree. Can you take us down memory lane a little bit? Tell us about your upbringing, childhood dynamic, however deep you want to take that.
Sure. I grew up as a fairly regular household, I suppose. Mum and dad were at home. I had a couple of brothers. I guess a slightly unique aspect of family life growing up was I grew up in a really religious home and to the point in which most people would follow the cult. It wasn't super harmful or anything, particularly as a young person, but it was really quite controlling. Once you became a teenager and wanted to make life decisions and so on, it was quite prescriptive in the way they thought people should live. I broke out of that as soon as I went to uni at 18. Once I finished high school, I went to uni in a different town. That was a good opportunity to break out of that system. But I suppose some of the teachings and the thoughts shape you to a degree. It was about rebuilding some of those mindsets over the course of the years from there.
What did you get your degree in at university?
I studied graphic design multimedia. So I was kind of a creative kid and I'd had some success at designing things. Even as a child, there was a new school being developed and built and I was one of the first students there and they made a competition to design the logo and I submitted my design and that logo was selected. It's still the logo of that school. So I think the affirmation and the approval of being accepted and the award winner really shaped who I was. So I ended up pursuing graphic design and multimedia at uni and eventually it ended up in website design. Websites weren't really a thing when I started out in the path I took. When they did become available to me, it was a perfect fit of that sort of technical, but also the creative elements. It's sort of a mixture of both, which is perfect for someone like me.
That's so cool that it's still the logo.
I get a buzz every time I drive past the school. It's in Mum's hometown. She's still there. So I drive past and see the logo and still feel proud.
Wow, that's amazing. So post-university, where did life take you from there?
My first job was in Sydney. So I was in Victoria. So when I finished uni, I wanted to get a job in Sydney. I went up there and got a job in an award-winning marketing company. The things have changed so much over the years. That was the year 2000. They were an award-winning marketing company, but they never designed a website. They had one computer connected to the internet, dial-up modem. We'd all share their email address and so on. So to think that's what marketing was when I started, these days, nearly all marketing is online, of course. So I feel really old saying that. It feels like I was there. My kids say I was there since the start of the internet, which it sort of is true, but for them, that feels like a long time. For me, it just feels like yesterday. So yeah, working in the marketing industry and eventually starting my own business. And I met my now divorced, my wife, I met her up there and got married reasonably young and had children and so on. And yeah. life took some adventures from there.
Now, how long after getting this job and like graduating university did you start your own business?
Yeah, I started really quite early on. I think I'd worked for other people for maybe 4 years or something like that before starting my own business, which was pretty naive. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know anything other than my skill set, in which I did at work. I didn't know how to do client meetings. I didn't know how to talk to people. I mean, the first few meetings I went to, I just remember sweating profusely just because I was so nervous, and had to sort of build some confidence around that. And even just basic things like I didn't know how to do bookkeeping and all the other things you need to do as a business person that you're not fully aware of until you get started and find out there's lots of gaps in your skills.
What made you decide when you did, now is when you were going to start your own business?
Well, an opportunity came up, actually. It was something that I always wanted to start my own business. It was always something for the future, but an opportunity came up where there was a guy that I knew. He tried to start his own business, and it was just too hard. He wasn't getting enough work. And he told me, I'm finished with this. I'm going to get a real job. And I said, well, what are you going to do with your few clients that you have, that you've been looking after? And he said, well, you can have them. So I thought, oh, well, I do want to start my own business, and there's a couple of customers to start with at least. So I took that on. It was very small at that point in time. I wouldn't have started when I did, only for the fact that opportunity presented itself, and I took it, and I just started part-time. So in the evenings, I was doing this new little business and then working a day job, and quit the day job eventually, cut back a few days, and then went full-time in my own business, and then eventually hired a team and all that kind of stuff. So I sort of learnt over the years. So I didn't completely withdraw from a full income right away, which luckily, because it was really hard to get work in the early days.
That's so fascinating, though, that like this opportunity presented itself to you, and you kind of like, you worked the 9 to 5 and then worked your own 5 to 9, you know?
I think opportunity finds you when you've got a deep desire, or it feels like a calling. It feels like there's a path set before us, and we just need to say yes to it when the opportunities arise. I don't know that we can control the time of things, but I think we can accept the path when it opens up. It feels like that to me anyway. It feels like doors open at the right time, right seasons of life. Sometimes it feels like it's too soon, but you've just got to trust the opportunities and to accept the challenge sometimes.
It's true. Is there anything that's helped you with the mindset of accepting the challenge?
I've always felt like if I can break things down to the most simple steps, so to think about what's the next small step that I can take that moves me forward to the thing that I'm trying to pursue, because it can be overwhelming thinking about the whole bigger picture, and you might have a massive dream, and it feels so overwhelming. But if you can just think about what's the next practical and logical step that you might be able to take sooner rather than later to propel you forward. I think that's the way I've always tackled it, just to take simple steps and not be worried about the complete picture, because complete picture sort of takes shape for itself. As long as you kind of got an end goal and a picture of what it might be, but the pieces in the middle, it sometimes is not as clear as what we would like. We would like a clear path forward, but it sort of reveals itself as you start to move forward.
I like how you mentioned like the next small step, not like everything you got to do, but the next small step. Even like with your instance, like you're going to take on the client, but you're going to keep working your day job, and that's the next step.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a safer way to, if you've got a big goal, and for me, starting a business is a big goal. The easiest path was just to take it one small step at a time.
That makes so much sense. Now, I'm curious, how long did you work it part-time before it became your full-time gig?
I feel like it might have been 2 years or 3 years before becoming fully full-time as, just self-employed. There was just in the evenings initially, then it was 2 days a week working on my own business. And then from there it went to full-time. So I would say, probably 2 years, something like that.
That's amazing. Is there anything that helped you like stick with it as you were still like maybe doing something, working for somebody else as you would have rather work for yourself? Because sometimes it gets difficult.
Yeah, anything worthwhile in life, there's challenges and obstacles to overcome. Certainly having good people around me that could help support, and to be not too proud to ask for help and support and ask people how to do things. So early on, I didn't really know how to win new work in terms of going to a client meeting, as I said before. So I joined a networking group, which was really great because I was all of a sudden mixing with business people who had done it before and knew what they were up to. And so being in a room where people knew how to do things, I could learn from them by observation, but also just to ask, hey, how do you go about doing this thing? And just learning that way was really helpful. Just to be always learning, I think, was the key.
They say no matter what it is you're looking to do, is putting yourself in a room, speaking to somebody who's already done it will help you get there.
Yeah. I think the people we hang around, there's sayings, I can't remember how they go, but the people that you hang around with, you end up becoming like. So that perspective, I've always tried to have a diverse range of people around me as well to open me up to new ways of thinking, because the danger is that you hang around with people only like yourself, and then you lack a diversity of perspective. So I've always tried to appreciate and value and bring into my world people that think differently to me.
That makes a lot of sense, to get their perspectives, even if they have a different perspective than you.
I really enjoy. It's a really beautiful life when you can see so much differences in opinion, but still able to get along and have successful relationships and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'd love to transition a tad and go into how you shifted from a survival mindset.
So as I said before, the biggest challenges in life, I think, are the biggest catalyst for change, because you get to a point in which there's no other alternative. And so 4 years ago now, I was married, as I mentioned, quite young. We had children. I found something in the marriage that I felt was not redeemable. And so it happened all of a sudden that one day I was in the family home and the following day I was sleeping at the office under the desk, and it felt like the whole world was falling apart. And at that stage, my health had deteriorated over the years. I hadn't looked after my health. I'd focused on the business so much, and just busyness of, with the kids and running them around and everything that, life's busy. So I was in a really, really bad place. At the worst, I was crying under the desk like a baby and convulsing and all sorts of stuff. The weird thing was I was able to compartmentalize to a large degree that pain and torment and so much hurt in my life, and still function really well at business. And I realized whilst that was helpful in some instances, it was also probably going to kill me if I didn't solve some of the issues in my life. That time crying under the desk, I quickly realized, I've got a really important meeting to be on Zoom in 5 minutes. So my eyes were all red and I'd been shaking on the floor. I got up and did that meeting and was able to just switch the work mode on and did a really good job of the meeting, got the business, biggest client we've ever won. I thought, man, that compartmentalization, that's helpful for that. But I've got to fix some of these. A friend of mine mentioned, you got to sort of deal with some of these issues because it's not something you want to stay like that forever. So I ended up booking in to see a psychologist, which was wonderful. I have a really strong network of friends and people. So I knew someone who manages a mental health clinic. And so I reached out to him so he could connect me with the right type of person. And he got me a psychologist. She was wonderful. She was really quite progressive. It was a real catalyst for a lot of changes. So she encouraged me to do a whole bunch of breath work, which I know is a big part of what you do. And it was transformative. It was so, so powerful to have breath work and a few other techniques and strategies to help regulate my own mind. Because when you're anxious as well, particularly, you're not breathing properly, just basic breathing, but then to take it to the whole new level of of breathwork was really, really cool. The first session I did was like an in-depth one. It took, I think it might have been 3 hours or something like that. It was wonderful. I was seeing visions and all sorts of stuff and shaking on the ground and a whole bunch of, it would have looked weird, but it was in a room and the context was just fine for that because that's what it was all about. And then here in Australia, they had beautiful music. They had people playing didgeridoo over us, which just sort of added to the experience because the didgeridoo has that sort of resonant feel to it. So it felt like it was going through your whole body as you're doing the breath work and being instructed. But it was something, it was great at that time, but it was also something I could look to implement in my life. If I was ever feeling dysregulated, I could call upon some little basic breathwork techniques just to get centered again and get myself regulated, just stop and recharge and get ready for the next thing. Because I mean, going through divorce, it's years of challenges. It's so many things that you need to dig through and things get said about you that are not necessarily true and a whole bunch of other things, missing the children, so many challenges. And it just felt like one thing after the next building up. But to have these little mechanisms to help me, I'm so thankful for the psychologist to connect me with that.
Now, how long ago was this about?
Yeah. So the divorce, the separation would have been about 4 years now. And so it was probably that breathwork thing that might have been 3.5 or 3 years, something like that. And so it was a real time to think about rebuilding my whole personal life. Business was going fine and it was sustainable and everything was okay with that. But I switched the focus on my own health and my own mindset. And strangely enough, business grew as a result of getting my own mindset and health in order. So I think if you've got something out of balance in one aspect of your life, it's going to impact other aspects of your life, your work, whatever it is. Everything's intertwined. It's not like you can compartmentalize and think that one thing can flourish and the other thing can be dead. You've got to kind of get everything working in order to get that right.
That makes sense. Is there anything that helped you be able to cover up your eyes and sit in that Zoom meeting as you were in the midst of it?
Yeah, to do that, I don't know exactly how I got through that. It's just because it just felt like muscle memory. So I do the Zoom calls for meetings all the time. I just went into that space really easily. And my eyes would have been really red. Actually, the one thing I did do, I didn't put the light. I had a light to shine on my face so I didn't look too dark, but I just left the light off that time and I knew my face would be in the dark. That was better in that instance to be able to speak to them and they wouldn't have known that there was any issue. Quite remarkable, really, when I look back to think of the polar opposite experience, being on the floor crying like a baby and then next minute presenting to a business people.
And now you said some people you knew people at the mental health clinic?
Yeah. I'm really fortunate. I'm sort of a people person. So I kind of know people in all sorts of fields. And so I knew the guy who was the practice manager. So he's not a psychologist, but he manages the business side of the practice. So that was really great because I could talk to him. Normally, I think it's true in probably most of the world. It can be really hard to get good support. And for me, I wanted someone really progressive and to think about other ways of mental health because that's kind of how I am. I certainly didn't want to go down the path of medication, which I'm not saying that's bad for other people, but for me, it's not a path I wanted. I wanted natural solutions and practical ways in which I could help myself health-wise. So he was great and found me the perfect person within the organization. She was wonderful in opening up my eyes, and it was almost like she had a real intuitive nature about her. She probably deals with this sort of thing all the time, so she can quickly pick up things. But I think there was a deeper element. I'm not quite sure what that was, but she was really great at what she did.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned the psychologist suggested breathwork and other things. Do you mind me asking, what else she might have referred you to do?
Yeah, so she didn't encourage. I tried plant medicine. She didn't tell me precisely to do that because that's against the law. Here it is. So, but I knew enough about the clinic and their views on some of these things. So whilst they didn't directly express any point of view around that, I kind of knew that was a space that as a clinic they were looking at. So I knew they weren't opposed to it, let's say, but they couldn't encourage it either. So plant medicine was really good too. And it's an interesting thing. It certainly is medicine in my view. It's not something that I've ever felt I wanted to or needed to do again. The way I did it, I just did it by myself, but I set up the environment just like they did the breathwork. So I had the same playlist. They had music and they gave us the playlist without the didgeridoo, the songs that they played. So I could set up an environment that was kind of consistent with that. So I had the right setting. I think the setting is really important. It's what makes the difference, in my view, makes the difference between just taking what should be a medicine and taking it for leisure, etc. That was really great too. And it's in some ways disappointing that it's not as available as it should be. Here in Australia, they're making good progress in the legalization of some of these things, but it feels as though it's still a way off having practical ways in helping people with these things.
I've had one experience with plant medicine myself, and I think it can definitely help some of the deeper traumas, even as opposed to even like you mentioned pharmaceutical medications, like some of them have a lot of side effects. So like I'm not fully anti them, but I've seen and experienced different side effects that I don't really want to take them if I don't have to. You know what I mean?
That's the way I am as well. And they always took, and like I'm not a doctor or anything like that, so I can't tell you precisely, but they always speak about the negative potential problems that you might have if you have plant medicine. But that's probably true of any medicine, really. There's always potential downsides. You know, if someone's got an underlying sort of issue, like a significant issue that's outside normal, then they might have certain challenges. I felt reasonably confident that I would be fine, and I was. People have the bad trips, so to speak, but I think it's about setting up the environment that's right and safe. So, yeah, for me, that's what I chose to do.
I get it. I agree. Now, was there anything besides breathwork that the psychologist suggested to you to do?
There was the whole range of things in just the way in which you think about like mindset. And so, as I mentioned I think earlier on, I grew up in what was perceived to be a cult. So it was a time really that she helped me through some of the thinking around beliefs as well. Because I think we just absorb our beliefs to a degree from our upbringing, and they may not be necessarily serving us all that well. And for me, I suppose she helped me to see that there's the dual aspect of most things in life. So in a cult experience, the one that I grew up in, there was either good or bad, you know, but in reality, in the world and life, things are often mixed in, and there's good aspects and bad aspects in lots of different things. And it's really quite complicated. It's kind of like a yin and yang kind of feel. So I took that time to think about, what do I actually believe, and where did these beliefs come from? And are they actually mine, or are they just borrowed because that's what I chose and that's what I heard and just sort of fell into by accident? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. So I don't have the same beliefs that I grew up with, for sure. And it's can be a frightening thing when you have an upheaval. It felt like a dissolving of me in its entirety. So a dissolving right down to the core, and then a rebuilding into something anew out of what was remaining. So yeah, it was quite a process.
I bet. And so that's why you think hitting rock bottom could be the catalyst.
Definitely for me it was. And obviously you don't want to manufacture hitting rock bottom, but if people are in that place, I think it's helpful for them to realize other people have been there and they've come through the other side better off. And I've certainly better off in every aspect of life, other than missing my kids, that's still a bit of, that's the one thing that sort of I still think about. But other than that, life is so much better in nearly every aspect of what I'm doing. So business is flourishing, my relationships, my friendships, everything like that. And the children, my eldest son, he's working with me 1 day a week now as well. So that's wonderful, because the fear was, in these sort of breakdowns and where things might get nasty, some things can be said about you. And I'm aware of some of those things. So the fear was that, the children would be taken and never want to spend time with me at all. But that's not true. The investment I made with them whilst I was there with them, they didn't forget. And so that's a real blessing that my son's working with me now and I get to spend time with him. He's nearly 20. And so, yeah, the other kids too. It's all working out really well.
That's really amazing. And he's almost following in your footsteps, already working 1 day a week with you.
Yeah, that's right. He's a real creative kid. So he's an artist. And so he helps people with their social media. He works with a few influencers outside of what he does for me. So it's a real blessing to be able to even sort of mentor him in the business aspect of what he does. So eventually he'll work for himself. I believe strongly he'll be able to do that eventually. But right now it's really great to be able to mentor him in that business side of things a little bit so he can pursue his creative endeavors to the fullest.
That's awesome. Even you guys getting to spend the time together. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is really good. And so it's probably it's the best part of my week, really, oftentimes.
I love that. That's awesome. I want to transition back a tad. You had mentioned about integrating breathwork into your daily life. Can you elaborate a little bit on how you've been able to do that?
There are a few little techniques that I just use if I feel like I'm a bit stressed out. They're things you can do at your desk, as you know. Sometimes I'll do a more in-depth, a longer session. Normally it's just a little something I can do on the fly. I wear an Apple Watch, so I can tell that my heart rate slows dramatically just after a couple of minutes of some of these practices. Some of the other things that I did, which I should have mentioned. So I got involved with the cold plunges, which is really good. I've got the cold bath there ready to go all the time. That's really helpful. And the other thing that I do as well is a sauna blanket, the infrared sauna blanket. So there are other mechanisms. They help me in various ways for my health. And they're almost meditative because you're setting aside time and it gives you time to think about things in a different way.
A sauna blanket.
Yeah, infrared.
No, I have not.
Yeah, well, I don't have the space for a full sauna. It sounds kind of weird. I know that. It's kind of like a sleeping bag is the shape of that, but it's got all the infrared material in there. And so you're just sweating. You have your clothing on there so it absorbs the sweat. I know it sounds a bit gross. Bathing in your own...
I think it's cool. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good at flushing out toxins and all that kind of stuff, I believe. So, and yeah, it's good for your health. People do it for weight loss and all sorts of things. I don't know how much of an impact it has on that side of things, but it certainly makes me feel a whole lot better after doing it.
Makes a lot of sense. That's so cool, though. They sell ones that you can have like in your home, but they're humongous. They're like very big. And I don't know that I want to put a huge sauna in my house. Even if I had the space, I don't know that I want one.
Yeah, look it up. I forget the brand of mine. There's a lot of manufacturers out there.
No, I'm curious if you have any other little tips and tricks you do for this daily like self-care.
They're really the main ones. I think it's really important for everybody, but men probably are not great at it, is to have people in your world, friends. I think we're so disconnected these days with the way we interact with social media and so on. It's kind of a substitute for genuine friends who can be there in times of trouble, but also in the great times as well. You share your journey in your life with them. And even for that perspective as well, it's so difficult for us when we're so close to our own things that we can't really see clearly. But a friend who's a couple of steps away could really help with that kind of thing. It's good for you in every aspect of life to have people around you. I think there's a real problem with that. Technology kind of creates fake relationships in a large way.
I agree. I think it can help on one end be connected with a lot of people, but like it helps disconnect you from the people that you're physically with.
100%. So yeah, I've been really intentional about keeping friends close. And I think for most of us, we might have a few really close friends and then acquaintances and so on as well. And that's good. But it's important to stay in contact with these people.
You had mentioned that slowing down can be the fastest way to rebuild your life. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I think everything feels so fast these days. Our attention spans are not what they once were. It just feels like there's urgency to try and do everything all at once. And it feels as though it's kind of like the wheel spinning. If you try and take off in your car too fast, it's just wheel spinning and you're not actually getting anywhere. Sometimes it's better just to think about things, taking some time to think about and reflecting upon what's been and where you're going and moving forward in a more thoughtful way. So creating space in our minds, I think that's why there's so many practices of mindfulness and so on are growing in popularity, because we're just so busy and so wired all the time. We're not making time to think about slowing down and moving forward effectively and efficiently.
We're not, everybody is just in this go, go, go mindset, even like the attention spans. Like people can't wait for anything.
We do a lot of social media. We're a digital agency and so we use those tools to advantage. It's pretty clear to me that even the length of a video, people can't even watch more than a few 30 seconds. You know, it's the attention spans of all of us seem to be eroding really fast. So yeah, it's a challenge. We're all trying, as businesses, we're trying to capture attention. So we just need better ways of creating meaning in the world so people want to listen.
That's true. Creating meaning so people want to listen. Have you figured out a way to do that?
Yeah, well, I think being unique. So for a business, it's never been more important to be really unique in your positioning. So, and particularly with AI and how it's mass producing content at scale and people are publishing information. And sometimes they're not even reading what they're publishing. They're just jumping on a ChatGPT and writing content because they know that's a way to market yourself. But it's all generic and bland and all the same as everybody else, because all it's doing is pulling in information from everywhere else, putting it into a new piece, and people are publishing that. But when you're adding a new perspective or a new set of values, you're writing something that's with heart and substance behind it. Well, it's adding some new value and it has the potential to show up to the right people at the right time. Otherwise, there's no purpose for that information to be surfaced to anybody. And we're all trying to get attention. So thinking about the way I talk to clients is to think about what is it in their industry that they really don't like, that things could be better. And every industry has, people will typically have their pet peeves of what they don't like. I have that conversation, not that we would ever talk about their industries in a negative context, but these sorts of things seem to come to the surface far more easily than the positive. So we give them a chance to purge almost all the negative things about their industry. And then we go, okay, well, what's the opposite to these things? It's almost like the shadow. And once we understand what the shadow, the darkness is, it's so much more easy to understand what the light is, because it's the exact opposite of those things. And then all of a sudden we've got a position in which we can market their business and a message that they want to share that's worthwhile sharing because it's distinct and uniquely theirs.
That makes so much sense. And I like how you start with the pet peeves, because as a society, most people on the whole can come up with their complaints about anything much quicker than they can think of, oh, I'm glad XYZ, you know what I mean? The complaints are, wow. And then you just switch it. What are the opposites of your pet peeves?
Yeah. Exactly right. That's the way I kind of look at it. And it's something that I've learned through my own rebuilding and journey. So I started thinking about like shadow work. Have you come across the shadow work,
Yep.
that line of thinking? And as I said before, growing up in the context of things were either good or bad. And, everyone's striving to be what they perceive to be good at, or the sin aspect, the opposite. But to realize we're kind of all of those things all at once. And there's aspects of us that are the shadow, that the dark side. I kind of realized, hey, if I can sort of delve into people's businesses and start thinking about the industries from the shadow side, it reveals the light. Because what is light if there is no shadow? Like it's the contrast is what is interesting. And so that's where the messages really come from. The marketing messages really come from that thinking of what is the shadow and what is the light.
I like that mindset of it. That makes a lot of sense, but I've never thought of the shadow in terms of business. It's always been in terms of myself.
Well, I think because there's, particularly in this day and age, it seems like people are trying to create perfect images of themselves or their businesses, and everyone's only saying positive things about themselves. But there's this artificial AI, so it's artificial. We know deep down it's not authentic. I think there's a real craving and a yearning for the authentic and the real and the tangible. So those that can present their businesses in a manner which presents authentically, and that might be exposing some of the thinking about things more holistically. Our kids pick up AI videos, for example, or AI written content. My daughter, who's 13, she'll pick up right away if something's just AI generated. And it's almost like it's fake. They're almost repelled by it. So I think there's a craving, humans, to connect as humans again. And the beauty of humanity is that things are not necessarily perfect.
I agree. And I myself am even starting to be able to tell more and more. And it's pictures, profile pictures, all these different things. It's giving it away, like even some of the posts, sometimes you can tell, and I'm reading it and I'm like, this doesn't sound like this person.
Yeah. And as you say, like the profile photos and people coming out like they're looking like models or something like that. But it creates a lack of trust once you do meet the person in person. It's not the same person. So there's that lack of trust in who they are. Are they covering something up? Inside, you just feel like something's not right here. I think presenting photograph, I like to have our clients feature their bios and their photographs on their website. They're often concerned that they're not as beautiful as what they would hope that they are, I suppose, or as polished. They, concerned about how they might look, but just owning it, I think, just being you and presenting, obviously take a nice photo of you smiling and so on. But if there's a disconnect of like a model looking photo and then they meet you in person and you're not that it's just going to cause more harm than good.
It makes sense about having the picture. People will connect with a person on the website,
Yeah. The other thing too with that side of things is I really encourage people to humanize their businesses and their brands. And that means to use photographs of team members and so on. Sometimes the businesses we work with, they're founder led. And it might be a couple that run the business, but one of the partners in the couple are reluctant to have their photo on the website because they feel as though they're more behind the scenes. And that might be true. But it's really good to have that diversity in your website because we work with trades and construction. So, for example, if it was a construction company, and I'm generalizing, but oftentimes it's the lady in a household that might be making a decision to build a family home and so on, or at least having a big say in it. So if they can see someone on the website that's kind of like them, there's that more relatability. So yeah, I think sometimes people are a little bit reluctant and want to stay behind the scenes, but it's really valuable if we can put those people forward within the website. The family-run business is a really powerful thing for a small business to show that they have a family and they have some level of values, and it's assumed if they're able to sustain a family.
That makes a lot of sense. And that it's more diverse, even if it's the husband and wife or whatever it may be, like there's not just one person doing it. And it might,
Yeah,
this other person might connect with somebody else that's looking on the site, differently.
absolutely. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. I'm just curious what you would say breathwork has helped you with the most.
That big session was a real breakthrough moment to dissolve and rebuild. So when I think about the breathwork, that was the biggest turning point. But the way in which I can just use it more on a daily basis, even if I'm feeling a little bit tired as well. Like it might be a whole bunch of things. I'll just do a little exercise at wherever I am, and it just helps recharge, refuel, be energized for the next step in the day. The days can be busy, but to take a few moments to do that, reset and go again.
And now, what does that look like for you?
It depends where I am. So it's usually I'm at my desk, and sometimes I go to face-to-face meetings. So sometimes in the car, actually, it happens if I'm stuck in traffic. I mean, it's time that I'm not doing anything. If it's gridlocked and I'm literally stopped, I might do some breathwork exercises in that time too. I think some of them as you know, some of them can be quite strong. So you wouldn't do it while you're driving and so on. You might not be driving too well. But it depends on the nature of where I'm at.
I gotcha. And that's awesome that it helped you dissolve and rebuild, and it helps you in the day to day. I love that. Now, I'm curious. I tend to ask most guests this, and I'm sure you've had multiples, but I'm curious what you would say is the biggest aha moment you've had in your life.
Yeah, wow, that's a really big question. The biggest aha moment, I suppose, the realization that the interconnectedness of everything. I suppose it sounds so simple, but it's so true. Every aspect of an individual's life influences the other aspects of their life. But not only that, it interacts with everything within your community, and probably beyond that, just the realization that everything is connected and everything influences the next thing. So if you can make a micro improvement, it might feel so minute and insignificant, but the ripple effect of one small change that can influence so many other aspects of the world, I think we don't realize sometimes the impact of those small changes we can make.
I love that comment. I completely agree. It starts with one small step, even like you mentioned earlier, like what is that next small thing that I can do to move this forward, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Wes. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great. No, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience. Hopefully they've got some value out of it.
I'm sure they did. Now, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen him on YouTube typically a number of times. I listen to some of his audiobook on Spotify as well.
I'm a big fan. He's got a podcast called On Purpose, and he ends it with 2 segments, and I've stolen them, 2 segments, and I end my show with those 2 segments as well. First segment is the many sides to us, and there's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in 1 word each.
1 word, okay. All right.
They're easy. It's just questions about you. What is 1 word someone who was meeting you for the first time would use to describe you as?
Friendly.
What is 1 word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Honest.
What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself?
Practical.
What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you as?
Oh. Woo-woo. Is that a word?
What is 1 word you're trying to embody right now?
Balance.
Second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Let's say to know your worth.
Why is that the best advice?
I feel like, particularly as a younger person, I always felt like imposter syndrome type thing. So I never felt quite good enough to do anything. I think the self-worth issues growing up, I don't know why, just to place value on who you are.
I agree. What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
The one that springs to mind in a business context is you've always got to follow up. So if you do a proposal and there's people who would say that you need to keep hounding the people to make a decision, I don't do any of that anymore. All I do is send the proposal, make sure they've got it, and that's it. They'll decide if they want to work with me or not, and that's perfectly fine.
So why was that the worst advice?
Yeah, well, I thought it sounded really logical because there's theories around how many times a person might have contact with a company before they make a buying decision to buy something. And so that made practical sense that you just need to keep pursuing them to get the sale done. But for me, it just felt like it was harassing people. So the way I looked at it was, I'll present the very best proposal that serves their needs really, really well. And of course, I need to make sure they got it because sometimes emails go missing and so on, just to put it on the table and then it's in their court. I think, sometimes people just might not feel as though they're not a good fit with the service we provide. And that's fine because I have an abundance mindset now. There's plenty of work and there's plenty of people out there that want to work with us without having to kind of harass them to do so, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes complete sense. What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Probably just some of the religious mindsets that I grew up with. I don't hold to those beliefs anymore. Whilst there's some positive aspects in there, a lot of it, I think it's there to control people and it's not there to serve people.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
I'd just be pleased for people to know that I just did my best. That's all I can hope for. I hope that my children I hope that I can be an example for them about just living to the fullest, living to your best capabilities, not to be worried too much about what other people's best is, because that's not yours, just to take your own path.
If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
One law. Yeah, that's really difficult. I don't know. You can't really legalize it, but I would like it if it was, so if people listened first. I think there's just so much misunderstanding in the world because people didn't take the time to listen deeply and understand exactly why someone might think or say a certain thing. It might be something that we don't know that we're missing.
That's true. Okay, I like that law. Well, thank you so much, Wes. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been good. I've done lots of podcasts. This has certainly been a different one. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well. And where's the best place that listeners can connect with you?
The business website, uplift360.com.au. People can book meetings with me. We can have a conversation. There's no obligation with that. Happy to have a chat.
Awesome. I will link that in the show notes. And I do just like to give it back to the guest. Anything else you want to share with the listeners before we close out?
No, I think we've covered a lot. So there's social media on the website as well. And I know not everybody does, but I'll connect with anyone on LinkedIn if they want to put in a connection request. That'd be great.
Awesome. I will link that as well. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Manders Mindset. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.